What's up guys, John here and welcome back to Johnmunstudios. In today's video, I'm going to show you a basic setup procedure if you're new to Cubase, so let's get right to it. So let's say you got a fresh new copy of Cubase and you want to go ahead and set up your audio inputs, your outputs. You want to do things like your sample rate, you want to change your buffer settings, you want to change frame rate, all that good stuff. I'm going to show you where to look and how to set all of this up according to whatever specs that you guys have. So the first thing that we want to do is we want to open up the studio window here. So if we go to Studio and go to Studio Setup, if you have an audio interface that you can connect either a microphone or plug in your guitar, this is where you want to go to choose the driver of whatever audio interface you're using. So in this case, I'm using the Apollo Twin, and it's called the Universal Audio Thunderbolt. But of course, you have all these other drivers, and whatever interface that you're using, whether it's Focusrite or M Audio or PreSonus or whatever audio interface you're using, you're going to see it installed here. Of course, if there's some interfaces that need some kind of driver that you need to first install from their website, you need to do all that setup first, and then you'll go ahead and see the audio interface in this menu here. So the next thing you want to find is the buffer setting. So if you actually click on your interface as soon as you choose it and go to where it says Control Panel right here, you're going to see you find your buffer size. So the buffer size is important because if you're recording in real time, you want to make sure that you get the lowest possible latency in your recording. So if you lower the buffer size, it's going to be more taxing on your computer resources like your CPU, but you're going to get the least amount of latency. But now let's say you're mixing and you've already recorded everything and you don't need to track anything live anymore. If you raise your buffer settings, it'll be a lot easier on your computer CPU and you're going to get a lot better performance when you're doing your mixing. So the next thing we want to look at is things like sample rate and frame rate if you're working with film. So let's go ahead and go to Project and then go down here to Project Setup. You're going to get this window here. So now here we have a couple of different things that we can play around with. And again, if you do film scoring, then this is very important that you understand this. So here you have project start time, project duration. So the project start time would be where exactly your project starts. You would do this generally where the first frame of action starts. So if you have a film and you put it in here, you would put the first frame of action, let's say on bar number 1. Things like project duration is essentially if I quit this out and I zoom out of here, the maximum I could zoom out is the number that I had here. So it was 2 minutes and 30 seconds. That's as much space Cubase is going to give me. Now let's say I change this to 10 minutes and I press OK. Now the new window that Cubase gives me, if I zoom out, is now 289 or so bars, and you can see that the project is much larger. So depending on the size of your project, if you don't want to scroll too much left and right, you'd want to put your project duration in there, so that way you can just have exactly what you need. The next thing to look at is project frame rate. So if you're working with video again, things are shot in different kinds of frame rate, so you want to check what frame rate your project is working on, and you can go ahead and choose it depending on what it is in this drop down menu. Or if your project has a frame rate and Cubase doesn't match it, you can actually just click this button here and press get frame rate from video, and it'll automatically choose the frame rate of the video that you imported into Cubase. Below that, we have things like display format. So however you want to see your display here, you can see it in bars and beats, you can see it in seconds, time code, samples, and then 60 FPS. Here, the only ones you probably need to worry about is bars and beats, and maybe even time code, because that's what film generally uses. But for the most part, since we are musicians, we are going to use bars and beats. We could do display time offset. So let's say the first measure here, the time is off by 1 second. You could just go ahead and offset it here by 1 second. And then the one next to that or under it, it's the bar offset. So notice how here, if I zoom into my first couple bars here, I have -1, 0, and then 1. This is standard practice in film scoring because you want to generally start your composition right on bar 1. So you give 2 bars of pre-roll for the musicians or the composer, which is yourself or someone else, to go ahead and start composing at bar 1. You can offset that by clicking 2 bars of offset. If I put it to 0, that means my project will now start at 1. But if I add 2 bars, so I'm adding 2 bars, it's going to give me 0 and -1. And then the last thing we have here is the sample rate and bit depth. So for film scoring or any kind of film, you want to shoot, the standard is 48K. So this is the sample rate that we use. If you're doing commercial records or, albums and stuff, then you want to do the standard rate, which is 44.1. But in this case, I'm a film composer, so I use 48. The bit depth is standard for either or, music industry or film industry is 24-bit. And for video games, they'll sometimes require you to do 16-bit, just because the file size has to be a little bit smaller so that it can all fit into the game, because of course it's then compressed and then sent out to consoles for people to play. And then you can also choose the record file type. So in this case, it's a broadcast WAV file. So this is essentially a WAV file. You can choose AIFF, which is the Apple version of WAV, and then you can also just choose a WAV file. I would leave it at broadcast WAV. So before we wrap up this video, there's another cool thing that you probably want to see at all times. At least I love to see it at all times, and it's this little info bar here where it says that my audio inputs is connected, my audio outputs is connected. I could see the max record time that I have available, record format, which I can see my sample and bit depth. I can see the frame rate. So the way that we activate these things so that we can see it on this toolbar is by hitting this little gear sign here. And it has to be the bottom one, because if we use the top one, then it's going to affect the top line, of course. So we're going to open up the bottom one. And if you don't see any of these, just go ahead and click. And you see that one of them disappeared. Let me go ahead and put that back in there. And now I have my record format, which is 48 and 24-bit. You can go ahead and customize this to whatever you like to see. And you have this available at all times when you're using Cubase as you're tracking or mixing. It's good to see because in case your project, let's say for some reason you're doing a film project and you have it at 44.1, you can already see it here. And if you click on it, look what opens up. It opens up the exact menu where we were so that you can go ahead and change your sample rate. Same thing with outputs here. You can open it and choose your outputs and inputs by going into this menu and selecting it. So let's say your left one was off or it's not connected at all. You can open up this menu, hit this drop down and select the inputs. So I have left and right here. And then I can also select my outputs if I open this up, and I could choose left and right here. If you have any questions throughout the video, just go ahead and drop your comments down below and I'll get to them as soon as possible. If you like this video, hit the thumbs up, subscribe. Don't forget to hit the ring button so you don't miss any of my weekly videos. Also, don't forget to check out the Johnmunstudios store. I have a variety of merch with the official Johnmunstudios logo on it, so go ahead and check it out. And as always, don't forget to share with your musician friends. I'll see you guys soon.